most research assignments ask you to form a thesis or main idea and to support that thesis with well-organized evidence. In a paper reviewing the literature on a topic, the thesis analyzes the conclusions drawn by a variety of researchers. So in this video, we're going to talk about how to write an APA paper and how to format your paper using APA in order to avoid plagiarism and to give credit to the researcher. So first, when you write a paper, you have to have a working thesis. Once you have read a range of sources, considered your issue from different perspectives, and chosen an entry point in the research conversation, you are ready to form a working thesis. That is a one-sentence statement of your central idea. The working thesis expresses more than your opinion. It expresses your reasoned answer to your research question, a question which people might agree or disagree. As you learn more about your subject, your ideas may change, and you can revise your thesis as you draft. Here's an example of a research question. Can educational technology improve student learning and solve the problem of teacher shortages? Working thesis. Educational technology can help solve teacher shortages by shifting the focus from teachers to students. And then you place this thesis at the end of your introduction. What does APA stand for? APA stands for the American Psychological Association. And the American Psychological Association encourages the use of headings to help readers follow the organization of a paper. For an original research report, the major headings often follow a standard model: method, results, discussion. The introduction does not have a heading. It consists of the material between the title of the paper and the first heading. For a literature review, headings will vary. And so you want to ask yourself research questions in order to focus your research. So in what ways is student-centered learning effective? Can educational technology help students drive their own learning? How can public schools effectively combine teacher talent and educational technology? So when you use APA, you use sources to inform and support your argument. The source materials you have gathered can play many different roles and help you support your argument. Readers need background information to anchor their understanding of your topic. If readers are unfamiliar with a term or concept important to your topic, you need to define and explain it. Or if your argument depends on a term with multiple meanings, you need to explain that topic. As you draft your rough draft, make sure you back up your assertions with facts, examples, and other evidence from your research. Expert opinion can add credibility to your argument, but don't rely on experts to make your points for you. State your ideas in your own words, and when appropriate, cite the judgment of an authority in the field to support your position. Do not ignore sources that contradict your position. Instead, use them to state potential objections to your argument before you counter them. Readers often have objections in mind already, whether or not they agree with you or not. Citing sources to avoid plagiarism. In a research paper, you will draw on the work of other researchers and writers, and you must document their contributions by citing sources. Sources are cited for two reasons: to tell readers where your information comes from, and to give credit to the writers whom you have borrowed words or ideas. You must cite anything you borrow from a source, including direct quotations, statistics, and other facts. Visuals such as tables and graphs, summaries, and paraphrases all need to be cited. Borrowing without proper acknowledgement is a form of dishonesty known as plagiarism. The only exception is common knowledge. That is, information that your readers may already know and could easily locate in any number of reference sources. The American Psychological Association recommends an author date system of citation. The source is introduced by a signal phrase that includes the last name of the author, followed by the date of publication in parentheses. The material being cited is followed by a page number in parentheses. At the end of the paper, an alphabetized list of references gives complete publication information for the source. In-text citation. Bell, 2010, reported that students engaged in this kind of learning, page 39 to 40. Bell, 2010, project-based learning for the 21st century, skills for the future. The Clearinghouse, 83 to 30, pages 39 to 42. This basic APA format varies for different types of sources. For a detailed discussion, you can see AP4. So in a research paper, you draw on the work of other writers. To be fair and responsible, you must document their contributions by citing your sources. When you acknowledge and document your sources, you avoid plagiarism, which is a serious offense. So 3 different acts are considered plagiarism: failing to cite quotations and borrowed ideas, failing to enclose borrowed language in quotation marks, failure to put summaries and paraphrases in your own words. Definitions of plagiarism may vary. It's a good idea to find out how your school defines and addresses academic dishonesty. Use quotation marks for your direct quotes to indicate that you are using a source's exact phrases or sentences. You must enclose them in quotation marks unless they have been set off from the text by indenting. That is, that's a block quotation. To omit the quotation marks is to claim falsely that the language is your own. Such an omission is plagiarism, even if you have cited the source. So in the original source, student-centered learning or student-centeredness is a model which puts the student in the center of the learning process. So the student writer has cited the source. However, he has not put quotation marks around his, so over here, this is an original source, but it's missing its quotation marks. So therefore, if you're missing your quotation marks, that's plagiarism. So here, the student did it incorrectly, so that's plagiarism. And now it says, according to Subbuteo, student-centered learning is a model which puts the student at the center of the learning process. Now you notice that there's quotation marks. That means that this is the correct way of doing it. And then when you cite a source, you always cite the author's last name, the date, and the page number for direct quotes. And then if you're doing a paraphrase, then you just have the date and the page number. I'm sure they're going to come up with paraphrases, summaries and paraphrases. So even if you write a paraphrase, you have to cite the source. So summaries and paraphrases are written in your own words. A summary condenses information. A paraphrase conveys the information using roughly the same number of words as in the original source. When you summarize or paraphrase, it is not enough to name the source. You must present the source's meaning using your own words and sentence structure. You commit plagiarism if you patch write, that is, you half copy the author's sentences, either by mixing the author's phrases with your own without using quotation marks, or by plugging your own synonyms into the author's sentence structure. And so the following paraphrases are plagiarized, even though the source is cited, because their language or sentence structure is too close to that of the source. So you can use Quillbot to rephrase your sentences so that your sentences are not so close to that of the author. To rephrase your sentences, you can also use ChatGPT to rephrase your sentences so it's not so close to the author. To avoid plagiarizing an author's language, resist the temptation to look at the source while you are summarizing or paraphrasing. After you read the passage, you want to paraphrase, set the source aside. Ask yourself, what is the author's meaning? In your own words, state your understanding of the author's basic point. Return to the source and check that you haven't used the author's language or sentence structure or misrepresented the author's idea. When you fully understand another writer's meaning, you can more easily and accurately present those ideas in your own words. Integrating sources. Summaries, paraphrases, quotations, and data will help you support your argument, but they cannot speak for you. You can use several strategies to integrate in-text citations into your own paper while maintaining your own voice. In your academic writing, keep the emphasis on your ideas and your language. Use your own words to summarize and to paraphrase your sources and to explain your points. How you choose to use a source as summary or paraphrase depends on your purpose. When you summarize a source, you express another writer's ideas in your own words, condensing the author's key points and using fewer words than the author. Even though a summary is in your own words, the original ideas remain the intellectual property of the author, so you must include a citation. Summarizing allows you to state the source's main idea simply before you respond or counter to it. When you paraphrase, you express an author's ideas in your own words, using approximately the same number of words and details as in the source. Even though the words are your own, the original ideas are the author's intellectual property, so you must give a citation. Paraphrasing allows you to capture a source's ideas, but perhaps simplify or reorder them. Use quotations effectively. When you quote a source, you borrow some of the author's exact words and enclose them in quotation marks. Quotation marks show your readers that both the idea and the words belong to the author. Although it is tempting to insert many quotations in your paper and to use your own words only for connecting passages, do not quote excessively. It is almost impossible to integrate numerous long quotations smoothly into your own text. It is not always necessary to quote full sentences from a source. You can often integrate language from a source into your own sentence structure. To condense a quoted passage, you can use the ellipsis mark, 3 periods, with spaces between to indicate that you have omitted words. What remains must be grammatically complete. The writer has omitted the phrase, a student-centered teaching and learning model, from the source. If you leave out one or more full sentences, use a period before the 3 ellipsis dots. Using brackets allows you to insert your own words into quoted material to clarify a confusing reference or keep a sentence grammatical in the context of your own writing. When you quote 40 or more words from a source, set off the quotation by indenting it 1/2 inch from the left margin. Use the normal right margin and do not single space. Long quotations should be informed by in other words, if your quotation is more than 3 lines, you need to indent 5 spaces into your paragraph. And then that's known as a block quotation. And I usually tell students to avoid using block quotations because they break up the flow of your paper. And only limit yourself to 1 in-text citation per paragraph. That way you don't overwhelm your reader with too many quotations. Whenever you include a paraphrase, summary, or direct quotation of another writer's work, prepare your readers for it with a signal phrase. A signal phrase usually names the author of the source, gives the publication year in parentheses, and often provides some context. It is generally acceptable in APA style to call authors by their last names only, even on a first mention. If your paper refers to 2 authors with the same last name, use initials as well. When you write a signal phrase, choose a verb that is appropriate for the way you are using the source. Are you providing background, explaining a concept, supporting a claim, lending authority, or refuting an argument? APA requires some verbs in the past tense or present perfect tense to introduce source material. Use the present tense only for discussing the applications or effects of your own results, the data suggest, or knowledge that has been clearly established. Researchers agree. Readers need to move from your words to the words of the source without feeling a jolt. Avoid dropping direct quotations into your text without warning. Instead, provide clear signal phrases, including at least the author's name and the year of publication. A signal phrase marks the boundary between source material and your own words and can also tell readers why a source is worth quoting. Using signal phrases with summaries and paraphrases. As with quotations, you should introduce most summaries and paraphrases with a signal phrase that mentions the author and a year and places the material in the context of your own writing. Readers will then understand where the summary or paraphrase begins. Without the signal phrase, Watson 2008 reported, in the following example, readers might think that only the last sentence is being cited when in fact the whole paragraph is based on the source. So when you cite a statistic or other data, a signal phrase is often not necessary. In most cases, readers will understand that the citation refers to the data, not the whole paragraph. There is nothing wrong, however, with using a signal phrase to introduce a statistic or other data. Readers should not have to guess why source material appears in your paper. You must put the source in context. If you use another writer's words, you must explain how they relate to your point. It's a good idea to sandwich a quotation between sentences of your own, introducing it with a signal phrase and following it with interpretive comments that link the quotations to your paper's argument. I call this pie structure. In other words, you integrate your in-text citation into your paragraph. So P stands for the main point, I stands for in-text citation, E stands for explanation of that in-text citation in 5 sentences. That's how I do it. And here are some examples of signal phrases. In the words of Mira, as Bell 2010 has noted, Donitz pointed out that, claimed by Sabutsky, explained Dembski, Horn, and if you want to look up verbs, here are some verbs for your signal phrases, so you don't keep saying Dr. Smith said, which can get really boring after a while. That gets old very quickly. When you synthesize multiple sources in a research paper, you create a conversation about your research topic. You show readers how the ideas of one source relates to those of another by connecting and analyzing the ideas in the context of your argument. Keep the emphasis on your own writing. The thread of your argument should be easy to identify and to understand, with or without the sources. So basically, when you synthesize sources, ask yourself these questions. How do your sources address your research question? How do your sources respond to each other's ideas? Have you varied the function of sources to provide background, explain concepts, lend authority, and anticipate counter-arguments? Do your signal phrases indicate these functions? Do you connect and analyze sources in your own voice? Is your own argument easy to understand and easy to identify, to understand with or without your sources? And if you use too many sources, then you lose your student voice. This is why I tell students not to overload paper with so many numbers. Use only one in-text citation per paragraph. And that means that one sentence out of 7 will be an in-text citation. That's it. 20% of your paper should be in-text citations, and then the other 80% should be your original material. Otherwise, you're going to get a high plagiarism score on Turnitin and end up with an F for your paper. So APA is used in social sciences and businesses. So in most social science classes, you will be asked to use APA system for documenting sources. APA recommends in-text citations that refer readers to a list of references. An in-text citation gives the author of the source, often in a signal phrase, the year of publication, and often a page number in parentheses. At the end of the paper, a list of references provides publication information about the source. The list is alphabetized by the author's last names. The direct link between in-text citation and the entry in the reference. In other words, your in-text citations need to match your references. So if in your paper you have in-text citations by Smith and Jones, in other words, 2 different authors, then in your reference section, you need to have Smith and Jones. So everything has to match. So that's basically what they're trying to say. So your in-text citations and your reference citations, everything needs to match. So in APA style, the alphabetical list of works cited, which appears at the end of the paper in MLA, is titled references. So if you're used to using MLA, then you're used to writing works cited at the very end of your paper, and then you write your list of sources. But then in APA, we don't use works cited, we use references. And so alphabetize entries in the list of references by authors' last names. If a work has no author, alphabetize it by its title, or you can use a website name. For all authors' names, put the last name first, followed by a comma. Use initials for the first and middle names. With 2 or more authors, use an ampersand before the last author's name. Separate the names with commas. Include names for up to 7 authors. If there are 8 or more authors, give the first 6 authors their name. Then you do a 3 ellipsis dots and the last author. If the author is a company or an organization, give the name in normal order. Put the date of publication immediately after the first element of the citation. Enclose the date in parentheses, followed by a period outside the parentheses. Use the date as given in the publication. Generally give the year for books and journals, the year and month for monthly magazines, and the year, month, and day for weekly magazines and for newspapers. Use the season when a publication gives the season. For sources on the web, use the date of posting if it is available. And you also use the date in which you retrieved the source. Italicize titles and subtitles of books, journals, and other long works. If a book title contains another book title or an article title, do not italicize the internal title and do not put quotation marks around it. Use no italics or quotation marks for the titles of articles. If an article contains another article title or a term usually placed in quotation marks, use quotation marks around the internal title or term. If it contains a title or term usually italicized, place the title or term in italics. For books and articles, capitalize only the first word of the title, subtitle, and all proper nouns. For the titles of journals, magazines, and newspapers, capitalize all words of 4 letters or more, and all nouns, pronouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs of any length. Take the information from the title page and copyright page. If more than one place of publication is listed, use only the first. So I'm not going to read through all of this, but basically if you want to see what a reference citation looks like, you should Google Diana Hacker sample APA paper and then download sample Diana Hacker sample APA paper, and it will show you all the reference citations. You can also go to www.apa.org and you can buy your own APA manual. Okay, so all of this you can read on your own. So APA in-text citation. And so your in-text citation, you have 2 kinds of in-text citations that we've talked about so far. A direct quote, where you quote the exact quotation, and then you have a paraphrase quote. So when you do the direct quote, you have to have quotation marks, then you have to have the, in parentheses, the author, the date, and the page number. When you do a paraphrase quote, you don't need quotation marks because you're not doing the exact wording, and you just need the author and the date. Then you have to place, and you don't have to put anything else, okay? You don't need to put the web address into the middle of the body of your paper. And then at the end of your paper, you're going to have a list of references. That's where you put the author name, the date, the article name, the journal name, the volume, the page number, then the date you retrieved the website, and then the web address. That's it. So that pretty much, talks about what this is. So I'm going to end it right here at APA 4A. We'll begin my, at the next video, we'll continue on. So if you have any questions, and if you liked this video, feel free to subscribe to the Professor H Writing channel. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me anytime.